Hello and welcome to Mothman's Bookshop. My name is Nicole, and today I'd like to tell you about Gallant by V.E. Schwab. Warning, I'll try and make this as spoiler-free as possible, but given it's a book review, there are bound to be a couple spoilers. I think around late last fall, I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, after seeing it a lot on Book Talk, and all I have to say is that I absolutely loved it. I've been wanting to read more by her for a while, and finally I read her most recent book, Gallant, released in March of 2022. I read it pretty quickly because it was just so good I couldn't put it down. Shadows of worlds, hidden pasts, prophecies, it was great, and I look forward to reading more by Schwab. But for now, let's get into it. After being sent to Maryland's school for girls by her mother as a little girl, Olivia was shunned by both her teachers and classmates for being nonverbal. All her life, she struggled to find a way to properly communicate with people who refused to put in any effort and send her away to do kitchen work instead. She's also always wanted to find out more about her family, specifically her mother. The book starts with her receiving a letter supposedly from her uncle asking her to come home, an estate called Gallant. When she arrives there, however, she finds an enormous but very run-down estate, taken care of by two married groundskeepers, Hannah and Edward, who have watched over the house and family for years, as well as her tired and angsty cousin, Matthew. Distraught by Olivia's arrival, he orders her to leave as soon as possible, but Olivia's a headstrong girl, and chooses to stay and explore the estate. Soon enough, she finds a door to another world, a sort of shadow of Gallant and the world she lives in. She discovers more about her family's past and present, as well as their purpose in regards to this world. Now, Olivia has to fight to protect the world she's always known and live up to the prior name. Let's get into the review. Now, you may be wondering, how does one write a book where the main character can't speak? I don't know, I didn't write it, but I did read it, which is why we're here today. Now, Gallant is written in a third-person perspective, which tells us what Olivia is thinking, and that's what really lets us connect to the characters and explore who Olivia is as a person. This also lets us see the motivation behind certain actions and why she acts the way she does, such as knocking over vases to be heard and seen. Olivia also uses sign language with certain characters, and I think Schwab used that as a way of providing distinction between characters that truly want to connect and communicate with Olivia versus characters that only really want to get rid of her, such as Edgar and one of the teachers at Maryland's wanting to communicate with her versus Matthew and the rest of Maryland's as people who only want to cast her out and move her away from themselves. Schwab also did a great job of maintaining that sort of dark and mysterious mood throughout the book. While there were those happy and family-like moments, you never really got rid of that tense and looming feeling, as if something was about to happen. The book was unique in that it never really switched from one mood to another. It had a dark mood from start to end in the book, but that wasn't something that got annoying or repetitive. It really worked in the context of what the story is about and how the plot was moving. Something else I really like about the book is that it started out really strong, especially in the way that it got right into the action, if you can call it that. The book starts at Maryland's, the school, with Olivia sort of walking around, sulking, interacting with the ghosts, but that only really lasts for maybe 1 or 2 chapters. Then she gets the letter, she goes to Gallant, and the story really starts. And I like that Schwab didn't drag that part out, because that's something that a lot of authors think they need to do, and sometimes it works for a story. But in this case, and in a lot of cases, you really need to get the story along and not drag the intro out for like 5 chapters. And that's what I want to commend this book on. Olivia was a really interesting and complex character in my opinion. Her ambitions and curiosity really flesh her out beyond just the quiet girl who sees ghosts. And her and Matthew act as excellent character foils. Matt is more of a passive character. He's pretty much given up on everything, including life, and only really cares about one thing, which is continuously fixing the house so nothing can happen. Olivia is adventurous, motivated, ambitious, and she's decided to simply never die. She wants to do things and accomplish things. And about the never die thing, here's a quote. "When Olivia was 8, she decided she would live forever," end quote. In regards to the villain, I absolutely loved the way he was written. There was something about him that was truly terrifying in the way he acted, in the way he poised himself, but just the way he was written and who he was as a character was so menacing, and I loved the way he played into the final conflict and just the book as a whole. Now, if you've listened to my last couple episodes, you'll know that I hate when the final problem, or resolution, or whatever it is crammed into one final chapter. That really irks me, and it feels so rushed and, I guess, suffocating. But in this book, it's done so well, because the conflict is spread over, or the resolution, is spread over a couple chapters, and it's also built up over the course of the book, which I really like. Sometimes the conflict comes out of nowhere, sometimes the resolution comes out of nowhere, sometimes the final battle suddenly starts and has to be crammed into the last 6 pages of the book, and I hate that. I hate it so much. But in this book, it's done really well because we get introduced to the villain pretty early on, and over the course of the rest of the book, we learn a lot more information about him, how to beat him, what his role is in Olivia's life. And the final battle and its resolution is spread over the last couple chapters, which is done really well, and that's what really makes the book great, in my opinion. Something unique about the book is that we got to see excerpts from Olivia's mother's diary throughout the book, as well as some drawings within that diary. You'll learn more about the drawings and what they represent if you read the book, and I don't want to spoil anything, but the way they were included in the story works really well, because not only do they allow Olivia to get a look into her mother's life, they also are important within the context of the story because they hold secrets within themselves, not just the drawings, but the entries and her mother's writing. I think I generally like seeing diaries within books, especially when they're tragic characters like Olivia's mother, or if you remember, Judith in The Archivist. We got to see her diary while she was in an asylum, and that truly crushed me while I was reading it. And I think the same applies to this book, because while I was reading her mother's diary, you really see her mother start to spiral downward and eventually stop writing at all. Imagining Gallant was a lot of fun, because no matter how decrepit this estate, it's still an enormous house. I also liked imagining the other side of Gallant, its shadow, because it was also this scary, looming, death-filled mansion, and I think that was fun to imagine how it would look like, especially with other descriptions that Schwab provided throughout the book. And finally, I think the ending works with the story and what the characters seem like they would do. That may sound a little obscure, but I really think the ending works really well when you think about who these characters are as people, the groundskeepers, Matthew, Olivia herself. It all works really well, and I really appreciate Schwab putting in the work to make the ending seem organic. Final thoughts? Absolutely amazing book. I loved every second while reading it, and I devoured it in like 2 days. It started out really strong and never actually dropped off. The scenes where not a lot was happening action-wise, the plot was still going strong, and we were getting useful information about the world, the family, and what was actually going on with the world beyond the gate. I think the book was better than Addie LaRue, but both were really, really good regardless. I cried at the end of both, and that's the real compliment, because I don't cry over books often. Most platforms rate this at around a 4.3. I'll rate this book as a solid 4.8 out of 5. Next, I'll be writing 2 scripts at the same time, because I have something fun planned for next week, and I have a lot of thoughts that I don't want to forget about my current read, The Murder of Mr. Wickham. Before we get into the outro, Spotify recently introduced rating, so if you like the podcast, I'd highly appreciate you taking a moment out of your day and giving us 5 stars. It really helps out and lets me know that you enjoy this content. Roll credits. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Mothman's Bookshop. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. If you did and would like to know when the next episode comes out, do yourself a favor and follow the podcast. And if you have any questions or recommendations, feel free to use the form in the description or join the Discord. Once again, my name is Nicole, and I'll see you next week here in Mothman's Bookshop.